Hi, and welcome to the second video installation for this project. This second video will be walking you through what HTRC Analytics is, why I used it, and why I believe it's a fantastic resource for anyone to use, as it should be accessible to everyone and doable by most. The issue of accessibility and the ability for everybody to engage in history in meaningful and constructive ways is very important to me as a digital and public historian, as I hope you've realized so far in reading through this project. Therefore, the purpose of these videos and what I'm about to show you is being done in a way, hopefully, that anybody can come to and look to for information and be able to do the same work that I've done here. So HTRC is HathiTrust's research center. It's just a digital center in which all of its users, if you have an account, have access to. When you set up a data capsule, which is their virtual machine that helps you actually text mine any of the sources that they have digitized, you have literally access to all of their documents. Now, that's obviously not useful in and of itself, but of course I'll walk you through how you can select the documents that you are most interested in working with, researching, and text mining. First things first, you're going to, of course, create a login and a profile. Once you do that, you're approved and you can go in and check out these resources that they have. Data sets and work sets and the algorithms don't exactly apply to this project, but they are simple and very useful tools that allow you to kind of get your feet wet when it comes to textual analysis and text mining. But for this project and for any project that has a need for more in-depth analysis of HathiTrust's texts, you're going to go into data capsules and you're going to click over here on create a capsule. Now once you click on that, which I'm not going to do because it's simply paperwork, you're going to put in the title of your project, why you need access to HathiTrust's digitized books, and then you're going to submit that to HTRC's reviewers. And then you'll have a capsule and it will look like this. Once you go back in, you'll have a capsule, and this is essentially a virtual machine that replicates a second computer within your computer. So it's kind of a computer inception, if you will. So in order to better explain that, I'll click on my capsule and I'll take you in. There is extensive research practices, policies of non-consumptive research that you are beholden to if you are doing research through HTRC. Because there's incredible amounts of copyright issues that are going to be presented if you're working with HathiTrust's massive corpus of texts, this virtual machine essentially allows you to do your research without being an expert in the legal policies and the copyright policies of books and historic texts and you name it. So of course you're going to review the terms of use and then agree and continue. Now this is what your second page of the capsule will look like. It has all the results that I've had released. It keeps track of is essentially what I filled in when I was creating the capsule. This project is intended to blah blah blah. And you have two options to actually work in your capsule. You can do it via terminal, which is a more professional, I suppose, more advanced level of text mining, where you're simply operating within the programming language of the machine. But for most of us, connecting to the remote desktop, like I said, kind of computer inception, is going to be the most useful line of work. So when we click on that, of course, we are confronted with some legal jargon again to make sure that we're not doing anything we shouldn't be. And this takes you to your virtual machine. Now, if you look over on the side here, you kind of understand that this is essentially a new desktop. Of course, you still have your desktop that you can be using to write your papers on the side here, but in this virtual machine, they are giving you all the tools you need to do your work, including Word and Excel, even though they're just kind of like off-brand versions of that, and Mozilla Firefox, in order to basically mine and do your research in an environment that they know would basically be impossible for you to do anything that would be against their one, the research policies, but also the copyright issues that will be confronted very frequently in doing this type of work. So with that being said, I'll start walking us through how to actually process texts and what that looks like in this virtual machine. So if we're moving on to this step, we're assuming that you already have in mind the texts that you are interested in actually mining. For this example, I'm just going to use the pamphlet Common Sense by Thomas Paine. This, of course, has been recorded, reproduced, published over and over again since its inception, since its first publication. So there's multiple different versions of it within HathiTrust's database, but the version I picked is one of the more recent published versions, which is actually still under copyright, but because I'm a user of HathiTrust and I've been approved by their reviewers, I actually have full access to that copyrighted version, just as long as I don't export it in a manner that is consumptive and is problematic. So in order to actually download that version of Common Sense, or whatever document you're going to be analyzing, you're going to write in the HathiTrust ID. Now, every single book or paper or anything that's digitized and recorded in HathiTrust's database has its own unique HathiTrust ID. Now, the easiest way to record your HathiTrust ID for any of the sources that you're going to use, and you can use multiple sources if you just list them one after another here, is to go over to your second tab where you have your sources pulled up. See, I'm using this one, this Common Sense by Thomas Paine, because it's relatively newer, therefore the images of it are probably better, but I don't even have full access to it in regular HathiTrust, but because we're using the capsule, I do have access to it. So this doesn't actually inhibit me. So I go to that, and as you'll see on the left-hand side here, there is a permanent URL or HTTPS for your book. Now, your HathiTrust ID will almost always start with 3 letters, and for some reason it's not letting me show you right now, but it will almost always start with 3 letters followed by a period and then a series of numbers. Those 3 letters and the numbers are always different, except for if they come from the same archive or library, then they usually have the same first 3 letters. Either way, it's down in here, and you can find it. Write that down somewhere on a scratch piece of paper or something, and then you can type it in here. And again, like I said, you can do multiple sources. So it could be Common Sense, it could be another pamphlet, it could be another book. They all have their own individual ID, and if you record them here, then you're good to go. If you are one number off or one letter off, or even this capitalization here, which you need to take care of and make sure that it is uncapitalized, it will mess up the actual process, and it will come back with an error saying that this doesn't actually exist, recorded here accurately. Now you're going to go up here and save as is, right? So we're going to save, but the key is, in order just to work better within the system, you're going to save it as a plain text file. So you're going to name this what it is. It's Thomas Paine's Common Sense, and then you're going to save it to your secure volume. Now the reason you have to save it to your secure volume here is because this is essentially your individual hard drive that even when the system isn't running, or when your capsule isn't running, or you're away from the capsule and you're not using it, all of the information saved on this secure volume is, one, your information, and two, it will not be deleted. It is safe from being deleted by the program or by the virtual machine. And so to say, if you were to save this same thing on the desktop, you could still do all of the work that you needed to do, but once you log out of your HTRC profile, it would be deleted. I'm not quite sure why that's the case, but you're going to be saving everything to secure volume so that you don't lose your information, you don't lose your work. So Thomas Paine, Common Sense 2, because I've already basically mined this pamphlet. Oops, I forgot. I needed to save it as a text file. I got distracted. So you're going to come down here to all formats and scroll to the bottom where it says text. You can't see that very well, so text as a plain text file. It's going to come back with a weird little error, but it doesn't really mean anything. You just say use text format, and you're good to go to load this HathiTrust ID into your virtual machine. So once you have that HathiTrust ID saved as a plain text file, you're going to go over to your terminal here. Your terminal is essentially what most people would recognize as a programming box, where you're going to use commands and languages to essentially accomplish and program the work that you want to do. So this is essentially your username. It doesn't really mean anything, but it is the beginning of every line of command. And because our information is saved at the secure volume file, we have to direct our terminal to make that secure volume our working directory. The way you're going to do that is by typing this command, cd space /media / if I could spell media right, / secure volume, which essentially just tells, again, it tells your terminal to look within that body of work, within that directory. It sets it as the working directory. So now it recognizes it and says, okay, yeah, I'm going to be looking mostly or only within media secure volume. And then in order to download your paper, your books, or whatever the thing is that you're using to mine for evidence and research, you're going to type out this command, HTRC download space -f, which just tells, when it downloads the -f tells it to make it its own unique file. Download, and then you're going to put the / media, again, can't spell it for some reason, secure volume, and then the actual name of the text file that we saved it and saved that HTR or that HathiTrust ID in. And so that was T Paine common, and then 2.text. Now you're going to press return or enter in order to run that line of code. But it's going to ask you for your credentials, your HathiTrust credentials, so that it knows you're allowed to use that text that you're trying to download. You're going to put in your username, press enter, and then it will ask for your password. Now, you're not going to see your password for some reason, but just trust if this thing is blinking, then you're typing, and I typed in my password, so now I press return or enter, and now it's downloaded. It's pretty anticlimactic because it doesn't say congrats or anything, but this just indicates that it has downloaded, in fact, that pamphlet that I told it to, with just using that HathiTrust ID. So now it's in the work set is what it's going to be named, and it is in your secure volume. So go into your secure volume down here. You can also access it through your files up here, but this is just kind of a shortcut. And then you're going to go to the top because I have it ordered by the time that it's modified. So this is the most recently modified thing, so it's at the top. It's just called work set because that's what the program decides to name it, kind of generically. And then you can also, of course, rename it. So it's easy to keep track of all your information that you're working with. So it's T-Pain, common, and just gonna make it kind of look ridiculous so it stands out. Now you go in here and you're gonna see a volume rights text, which means again, more legal jargon that you can read in order to make sure that you're not misusing this information or this text. But then it has this file on the inside, which is the HathiTrust ID, and then the actual your text file, or the file that it just downloaded for you with the HathiTrust ID, and you can click on that and you can actually see this is quite literally the whole pamphlet or the book. So you could go, this is page 6, and this is an OCR'd version of the book. So it is put into plain text so that it can be understood by computers. It can be read by computational analysis tools. This isn't good enough. This isn't cleaned. It's, for lack of better terms, pretty dirty. It has a bunch of auxiliary information that is not useful to you and would just weigh down your research results. And so the next step will be actually processing this text to clean it up, and that process is done again in the same terminal window that you were just working in. And you're going to type in Jupyter Notebook and run it. So this opens up essentially like a Google Docs of all of your work that you've done in your virtual machine. So you're going to go down and you're going to see there's stuff like my T-Pain document that I was just showing you is right here. But in order to clean that document, we're going to run this line of code that was provided to me just via a open source website, GitHub. GitHub has plenty of codes that you can run in different languages. So this is one that I downloaded to my capsule here, and it's saved in an XP or EXP format so that it actually operates like the terminals that you would use to program in your computer. And the only thing that you actually need to do in order to plug in your documents and to clean them is to change the name here of the file that it's going to be looking in. And so again, mine was T-Pain common, and as you can see here, that's the file it's working with. I'm going to go in here and move these volume rights out so it doesn't get confused. So I'll just put it into secure volume. So now that you have your file typed in, you go back to the top. You click on the left side so that this blue line shows up, which means the computer is ready to run this line of code. And now in order to run it, you're going to press Shift and return. And then it goes down to the next line of code. You're going to press Shift and return. Next line of code, same thing. And the fourth line, the final line, is going to be show you that your documents that you loaded here are going to come out on the other end right here. Okay, so now the whole program is run. It has downloaded your kind of dirty compilation of OCR text that comprises Thomas Paine's Common Sense. It's downloaded it here. Again, you see that HathiTrust ID, and it puts it through some more code in order to actually clean it and connotate it. So again, you see on the other side, this is your in, and then this is your out. Oh, you'll see the HathiTrust ID again, and it'll show you that there's 98 pages. When you see that number, that doesn't really mean anything to you, except for now you know how many pages there are in Common Sense. But also it just indicates that the program has run and it's finished, and you can now move on to actually analyzing your text. So the way you're going to have to do that is by first exiting out of here, and make sure you're doing that because there's only so much computational power that you have access to in this virtual machine. And this is essentially the tool that we're going to be using in order to analyze our actual texts, to actually get the results and then write on those results. It's called Voyant Tools. It's an open source tool that's free and really easy to use, but we'll get to that in a second. I'm going to minimize that, and then the cleaned and connotated text file is going to be located after you've done that programming language that's cleaned it. It's going to be thrown back into the secure volume, but it's going to look like this. It's going to have the HathiTrust ID, and it's going to be one continuous file. So if you look over here, you can see you can pull down through and go through the whole book or the whole pamphlet, Thomas Paine's Common Sense. Now it has all of his words, but none of the kind of superfluous information, whether it be footnotes or endnotes or headers or whatever. All of that has been removed, and now you just have this clean text that your computer will love to use and will make your life a lot easier when trying to get accurate results. If you're trying to look at, what is the language of common sense according to Thomas Paine. So we'll click out of that because we don't need to have it open anymore, and again rename so that you can keep track of the things that you're doing. T-Pain common, and that's good enough because it's unique. Now you're going to come over here and you see Voyant actually has its own, for lack of better terms, thumbnail. You're going to click on that, and you can launch it in your Mozilla Firefox internet browser. And this is, I should have clarified, Voyant is a web-based text analysis tool. So anyone has access to this if they have access to the internet, which is really cool. Now we're going to upload Common Sense to Voyant to see the results in the text analysis that we can kind of pull from it. So we're going to upload. It's going to take you to your secure volume because that's where you've been working. Now, it's important not to get confused on what Thomas Paine files you're using. This was the Thomas Paine Common Sense that wasn't cleaned. So you want to go back down to remember that that clean file, which is just a continuous text file. So this is the final product that you want to mine. You're gonna double click or press upload or whatever so that it loads that body of text as its corpus into Voyant. Now Voyant shows you 5 different panels of information here, and all of them can be customized. So this is a serious kind of visualization of the most common terms that Thomas Paine uses in Common Sense. So as you can tell, just again visually, the most common terms are hath and king and government and England and men, man, power. And that's all significant. You can derive a lot from that. But it's also just more simply listed out here as the top most frequent words in the corpus. It's also listed here, but more completely. These are all of the counts of every term that was used more than once in Common Sense. Now you can also see the links between the most common words. So when you come over here on links, it's another kind of visualization, which is really interesting to play around with. These other terms that he uses frequently have connections as well that you can explore. These are all tools that you can manipulate for your benefit to get combinations of results. And so I'm not super interested in hath, right? Hath doesn't really mean anything to me in my analysis of Thomas Paine's Common Sense. But king, government, and men certainly do. So king and government and men and power. Now this is showing you how often each term is being used within a segment of the document. So the document is one document, but you can break it into different segments. So say, there might be 10 chapters of Common Sense, which I'm pretty sure there isn't, but you could say these are the 10 chapters of Common Sense. And in this first chapter, when he's referencing power, he's referencing king in a very similar movement in time. So you know that in this segment, he's referencing the king's power. When he's talking about power here in the beginning, he's talking about the king. But when he's talking about power over here, it's corresponding almost perfectly with America. All that to say, this is a really cool way of finding what terms are being used in conjunction with each other over a period of time. But imagine you have a corpus of thousands of letters by a significant person, and you have them in chronological order. Over time, you can see how the language of an individual or a group of people changes, and you can derive whatever analysis or results from that. Seeing the movement of power and the king at first correlating and being very synonymous with each other, and then eventually America and power being synonymous with each other. That, to me, is a very significant piece of evidence that deserves more research and more looking into. The next process in Voyant, in order to make sense of everything and to have the results at your fingertips, you would come over here, and each of these tools has their own export kind of button, and also this button where you can choose what tool you want there. There's other tools that I have not showed you that you can select and use to also visualize and process the textual data. But this button is your export. So if you click on that, it's going to come up with a bubble that says, do you want to export a URL for this view? And because you're in a HTRC virtual machine, you do not want this option because you cannot export something that is not text, and URLs can't be approved by their board because it might conflict with the non-consumptive policies. So you're going to want to export your current data, which is you click on this and it rolls out and it gives you what different forms of the data. You can just do the current data, which is what you see on your screen, or in text. You don't want HTML and you don't want JavaScript here, and you want more than just what you see on the screen. So you're going to export all available data as tab separated values or text. So you click on that box and then click export. It's going to ask you, are you sure you want all that data? And you say yes. And then it will give you all of that same data that you saw, but in a text format, which all you have to do is select all where it's highlighted. Then you can copy that, and then you can put it into an Excel file. And now you have all of that phrases data that you can work with in order to make interesting and significant assertions. So once you have that information copied, you can go over to this generic version of Excel, Libre apparently. You're going to click in your box, left click, so that you get your paste options. You're going to paste special, unformatted text. You don't want any of the formatting come with it. And then it will show you what that essentially will show up as. You click OK, and now you have all of your phrases, the length of those phrases, and the frequency at which those phrases are used. And now you have raw data that you can use in order to do your research. You're going to want to save that data and then save it in your secure volume like we have been the whole time. And keep it labeled so that you know what it is. I'm going to say phrase. Make sure it's in your secure volume. Save that. And then exit out. And you can continue to do this with all of these different tools in order to get as many different kind of research results, whether it be correlations of words, contexts of words, the phrases that are being used, or the trends, or whatever. And you can collect all of that data and continue to do basically what I just showed you in your Excel, saving those Excel files. And then once you're done and you feel like you've collected all of the data that you need for Thomas Paine's common sense, you're going to go back into, I'll just minimize this now, your terminal that's connected to your secure volume. Right, so now that you have your raw data saved in Excel files like this, you want those results to also be on your actual computer so that you can continue to use them, continue to manipulate them, explore them, and also add them to whatever project you're doing, whether it be a paper or a website or whatever. And in order to do that, you have to, again, get permission from the HathiTrust's Research Center. They're going to review your results and make sure that they are not in conflict with any of the research policies. But to actually do that, you're going to get back into a terminal like this. You're going to type this command, release results, and add. So this will essentially is the command adding your Excel file to the release results spool here, which when executed is essentially a launching point for your results to be sent to HathiTrust, where they'll review them and then send them to you via an email. So you're going to add, and again, you're going to pretty much do this every time. Make sure that you're in the right directory. Add media secure volume and the file in which you're trying to get released, which is T-Paine phrase. .ods. Now you're going to run that via your return or enter button. And it will show you here that it was deflated by 11%, as it's basically been turned into a zip file so that it's most easily transferred between here and HathiTrust and from HathiTrust to me. But in order to actually get those results released, you're going to type the same command, release results, and instead of add this time you're going to put done. Now I'm not going to do this because I already have this information already released, but once you type this you're going to hit return or enter, and then it will say, thank you for sending us your results. We'll review them and get them back to you as soon as possible via your email. Now whatever email that you have set up with your HathiTrust account, that's the email that they'll send it to. They'll send it to you as a zip file. You're going to open that zip file and you'll have essentially all of the results that you've created, whether they're in these Excel sheets or they're in Word sheets. Either way, you'll have your results on your actual desktop, on your actual computer, to where you can add them to whatever project that you're working on. So hopefully you found this useful, and hopefully it wasn't as complicated as perhaps I made it sound. But good luck, and I hope you have some fun with it.